Joseph then went to see Pharaoh and said, "My father and brothers have arrived here from Canaan. They have come with all their flocks and herds, along with everything that they own. They are now in the land of Goshen." Joseph took 5 of his brothers along and presented them to Pharaoh. Pharaoh then asked, "What is your occupation?" They replied, "We are shepherds like our ancestors. We have come to live here in Egypt, for there is no pasture in Canaan for our flocks. The famine is very severe there. We request permission to live in the land of Goshen." Pharaoh then said to Joseph, "Now that your family has joined you here, you may choose any place you like for them to live here. Give them the best land of Egypt. The land of Goshen will be fine, and if any of them have special skills, put them in charge of my livestock too." Joseph then brought his father Jacob to Pharaoh and presented him as well. Jacob then blessed Pharaoh. "How old are you?" asked Pharaoh. Jacob replied, "I am 130 years old, but yet still not nearly as old as many of my ancestors." Jacob blessed Pharaoh again before he left. Joseph then assigned the best land of Egypt, which was Ramses, to his father and brothers, just as Pharaoh had commanded. Joseph then gave food to his father and brothers, appropriate to the number of dependents. Meanwhile, the famine became worse and worse. The crops continued to fail throughout Egypt and Canaan. Joseph collected all the money in Egypt in exchange for grain and brought the money to Pharaoh's treasure house. When the people of Egypt and Canaan ran out of money, they came to Joseph crying for food. "Our money is gone, but give us bread. Why should we die?" they said. Joseph then said, "Well then, since your money is gone, give me your livestock. I will give you food in exchange." And so they did as requested. Soon all the herds, flocks, and donkeys of Egypt became Pharaoh's possession, but at least they were able to purchase food for that year. The next year they came again and said, "Our money is gone and our livestock is yours. We have nothing left but our bodies and land. Why should we die before your very eyes? Buy us and our land in exchange for food. We will then become servants to Pharaoh. Just give us grain so that our lives may be saved, and so that the land will not become empty and desolate." So Joseph then bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. All the Egyptians sold him their fields due to the famine being so severe. This is how all the people of Egypt became Pharaoh's servants. The only land he did not buy was the land that belonged to the priests, for they were assigned food from Pharaoh. Joseph then said to the people, "See, I have bought you and your land for Pharaoh. I will provide you with seed so you can plant the fields. Then when you harvest it, 1/5 of your crop will belong to Pharaoh. Keep the rest for yourselves." "You have saved our lives," they exclaimed. "May it please you, sir, to let us be Pharaoh's servants." Joseph then made it law throughout the land of Egypt that Pharaoh should receive 1/5 of all the crops grown on his land. But since Pharaoh had not taken over the priest's land, this law did not apply to them. So the people of Israel settled in Goshen in Egypt. Before long they began to prosper there, and their population grew rapidly. Jacob lived 17 years after arriving in Egypt and was 147 years old when he died. As the time for his death grew near, he called for his son Joseph and said, "If you are pleased with me, swear most solemnly that you will honor my last request. Do not bury me in Egypt. When I have passed, take me out of Egypt and bury me with my ancestors." Joseph then promised that he would. Jacob insisted, "Swear that you will do it." So Joseph gave his oath, and Jacob bowed in worship as he leaned on his staff. One day, not long after this, Joseph was told that his father was failing rapidly. So Joseph went to visit him, and he brought his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. When Jacob heard that Joseph had arrived, he gathered up the strength and sat up in his bed to greet him. Jacob then said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me. He said to me, I will make you a multitude of nations, and I will give this land of Canaan to you and your descendants as an everlasting possession. Now I am adopting as my own sons these two boys of yours, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born here in the land of Egypt before I arrived. They will inherit from me just as Reuben and Simeon will, but the children born to you in the future will be your own. The land they will inherit will be within the territories of Ephraim and Manasseh. As I was returning from Padan, Rachel passed away in the land of Canaan. We were still on the way, just a short distance from Bethlehem. So with great sorrow I buried her there beside the road to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. Jacob then looked over at the two boys. He then asked, Are those your sons? Joseph replied, Yes, these are the sons God has given me here in Egypt. Jacob then said, Bring them over to me and I will bless them. Jacob was half blind due to his age, and so he could hardly see. So Joseph brought the boys close to him. Jacob then kissed and embraced them. Then Jacob said to Joseph, I never thought I'd see you again, but now God has let me see your children too. Joseph then took his sons from their grandfather's knees, and he bowed low to him. Then he positioned the boys so Ephraim was at Jacob's left hand and Manasseh was at his right. Jacob then crossed his arms as he reached out to lay his hands on the boys' heads. His right hand was on the head of Ephraim, the younger boy, and his left hand was on the head of Manasseh, the older son. He then blessed Joseph and said, May God, the God before whom my grandfather Abraham and my father Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life, and the angel who has kept me from all harm, may he bless these boys, may they preserve my name and the names of my grandfather Abraham and my father Isaac, and may they become a mighty nation. Joseph was upset when he saw that his father had placed his right hand on Ephraim's head instead of Manasseh, so he lifted it to place it on Manasseh instead. No, father, this one over here is the older. Put your right hand on his head, said Joseph. I know what I am doing, my son, said Jacob. Manasseh too will become a great nation, but his younger brother will become even greater. His descendants will become a multitude of nations. Jacob then blessed the boys that day. The people of Israel will use your names to bless each other. They will say, May God make you as prosperous as Ephraim and Manasseh. This is how Jacob put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. Jacob then said to Joseph, I am about to die, but God will be with you, and he will bring you back to Canaan, the land of your ancestors. And I give you an extra portion beyond what I have given your brothers, the portion that I took from the Amorites, with my bow and sword.